Now guys, I know that you remember last year when the XH2S had a lot of controversy around it, and there was pitchforks out, people were kicking and screaming, people were making YouTube videos making fun of the autofocus, but Fujifilm has since then assembled their biggest and brightest minds, and they all put everybody in a lab, and they have improved the autofocus considerably since last year. Now the reason I'm making this video is because people still believe that the XH2S has bad autofocus. And just to show you guys how well the autofocus on the XH2S is, I'm gonna put it up against a heavy hitter, this camera right here. This is of course the FX3, and this is God tier level autofocus. So we're gonna put it up against the FX3, and I'm gonna have the Fujifilm XH2S attached to my Ninja V, and the FX3 is gonna be attached to an iPhone so I can actually record the screens. So you will be able to see exactly what the camera sees, and I'm gonna be running a few very basic tests, eye tracking. I'm gonna track different objects. I'm just gonna run in and out of frame. I'm gonna show you exactly what the camera sees, and you be the judge. You let me know if the autofocus on the XH2S sucks. Okay guys, so we are back, and I'm going to give you my honest opinion on what I just saw comparing the XH2S and the FX3. Now right off the bat, the FX3 definitely has better autofocus overall, but the XH2S is not far behind. Now one of the things that really surprised me about the XH2S is how well it tracks an eye. So it was very, very close to how well the FX3 performs, but I mean, you could just see from looking at the footage that the XH2S does kind of the little box that tracks your eye, right? It's not as sticky as the FX3. The FX3 is just like really like right there on your eye, and it stays, you know, kind of very close as you move, where the XH2S kind of leaves like a little trail almost behind, but it still tracks your eye just fine. So the other thing that really surprised me about the XH2S is the area autofocus. Now, if you have a little square in the center, it will focus onto that little area. Now, as you can see from this example here, as I move towards the glass, the area autofocus is working really, really well to kind of track that glass. And then as I point up to the window, you can see how well it transitions into the window and then again back to the glass. And then of course the same thing goes for the FX3. They just both work really well when it comes to area autofocus. Okay, so here is where the FX3 just absolutely kicks the XH2S's ass. And it is absolutely the tracking, okay? The tracking on the XH2S is like, I would say a 5 out of 10. Okay, because it will get stuck, it will see something else as if it's tracking that object. Multiple times it got hung up on my hat because the hat was black, just like the little cap that I was using to track. If you move too fast, the tracking kind of gets lost as well. You can see the little trail again, like similar to the eye tracking, but just actually a bit worse compared to the eye tracking. Now, it also gets worse if the object or subject or whatever you're recording is kind of blending with the background, right? Like this piece of glass that I had here, the glass, it really had a hard time locking in on that glass because there was not enough contrast in the scene for the XH2S to really lock in. But things really changed dramatically once I had the XH2S on the table and I was tracking that. That seemed to help the XH2S a lot. Like that contrast really, really helped a lot. So the system definitely is phase detect and contrast-based autofocus, but it has a stronger, I would say, contrast-based emphasis over what the FX3 is doing, which is just an awesome phase detect autofocus system. Now, of course, the FX3 is not magic. It's not perfect. You will have instances where the tracking just gets lost or the autofocus doesn't just quite, change from one subject to the next. You'll have situations like that, but it is, however, rare. It is definitely more rare than the XH2S. So in conclusion, if I could rate the autofocus systems, the XH2S compared to the FX3, the FX3 is definitely, a 10 out of 10 when it comes to autofocus. And then the XH2S is going to be more like I would say 7. If you're considering picking up an XH2S, you really need to understand what type of work you do. If you're doing a lot of like tracking subjects, I definitely would not recommend the autofocus of the XH2S for those particular things. If you like keeping subjects in the center, or if you're just tracking human eyes, then it is perfectly fine. Also, do not forget the XH2S autofocus is heavily dependent on the type of lens that you use. So in this comparison, I was comparing the 16 to 55 f2.8 to the Sigma Art 24 to 70 f2.8, and this is the new Sigma Art, the latest and greatest autofocus tech. So it's definitely going to be one of the best autofocus lenses that comes from Sigma, that's, E-mount native. If you're going to use a lens, especially an older lens that's meant more for photography, the XH2S autofocus is definitely going to suffer because of the lens. Now, a perfect example of this is the older 23mm f1.4. This is the original version. Now, although the lens optically is amazing, it is definitely slow to autofocus, and you can also hear it. So that's really bad when you have a microphone on top of your camera. You can definitely hear the motors engage. Now, guys, I tell you what firsthand, as somebody that has owned the XH2S for 3 years now, I have seen all the iterations of all the firmware updates, and this firmware update, the latest and greatest one, is absolutely the best when it comes to autofocus. Yes, we had issues in the past last year, but that is long gone, and the XH2S is very, very usable, in my opinion, for professional work, for vlogging, or just social media content in general. And I do use my XH2S professionally. I've done a lot of work with this camera, and it has been great. I have had issues, but that was last year with the old firmware update, and since then, I don't feel like I'm missing anything when it comes to autofocus. So yeah, guys, you let me know what you think of the Fujifilm XH2S autofocus comparison with the FX3. And if you have any questions or if you have any comments you want to leave those in the comments section below. And if you want to see more videos like this about the FX3, about the XH2S, consider subscribing because it would mean the world to me. So that is it, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.